Welcome back to Practice Underwater. Apparently, I say already all the time.
You do.
So already, welcome back to Practice Underwater. We have our fake doc today, or real doc, fake name James. And I'm really excited for today's episode. This is a group practice, which is right up my alley. I don't cherry pick these a lot, but I kind of do. And I really enjoyed this one. So this is a really good episode. And I don't know, I think I took this in a little bit of a different direction. This isn't the typical Practice Underwater group practice episode. I think you guys are going to enjoy this. So let's jump right in. Matt, do you have anything you want to add before we get started?
There were some directions you took that I may have not chosen myself, so it was great to have you do this interview and see where you took it, your perspective. I thought that was really cool. I think you guys are going to enjoy it.
This is our real doc, fake name James. Alrighty, welcome to Practice Underwater. We have here our real doc, and we're about to get his fake name. So before we get started, what's going to be your name today, Doc?
Let's do James.
James. All right. So in case you guys are wondering, I always ask them off air. I let them pick that name. So that was a rehearsed conversation right there. Now we'll get into the authentic stuff. So James, tell us a little about yourself, about your practice, just a little introduction. And obviously this is anonymous, so keep out any information that could identify you.
I graduated in 2016, got an associateship out of school with a group practice that owned a couple offices. And I started out in two of their offices, bouncing back and forth, and then I went full-time to one office. And I really liked that office, but I didn't see myself going full-time with the group. It was kind of like, I wanted to buy in and get ownership, and it seemed like, they were like willing to sell me like 10% like every like couple years. And I was like, that's not going to work for me. And so, I'd been listening to shared practices, and I really wanted to get into ownership. I decided that was what I wanted to do. It's kind of always, what I wanted to do. So, I should say none of the owners of this group practice worked in my practice. It was me and one other associate. And so I started looking at practices. I actually reached out to you, George, on a couple of practices. In my area, I don't know, it's kind of saturated. Like, there's not a lot of good practices that come around, to be perfectly honest. Like, I looked for over a year and a half probably at every single practice that came on in my area. And, maybe three were grossing over 600,000. I don't know. It was just like, and so I finally came to the point where I found a practice that was kind of where I wanted to be, and it was doing pretty good numbers. I had come close on a couple, and you had helped me look at those, and finally you got busy and I got to the point where I could do it on my own, which was awesome. So I kept looking. I finally found one that I was really interested in, got under contract on that, and told the owner docs that hey, thanks, but I found this practice that I'm going to go by. And then they were like, oh, wait, whoa, what if we sold you the practice that you're in right now? And so I was like, oh, okay, so now you want to do that. But it did work out. I ended up buying the practice that I was in my associateship. I kind of got the, I basically had them I had kind of all the negotiating power in that situation, because the other associate that was with me had just left like a couple months earlier. And to be perfectly honest, that practice had not made money in years until like that year. And then I was just about to leave. They would have had to go back to square one. So it worked out for me. I was able to buy my practice, which the numbers of the practice I was in were actually better than the one I was going to buy a little bit. And I wouldn't have to be meeting patients for the first time. All the patients knew me and everything like that. And so it just kind of fit. So I don't know. That's where I am now. I bought that. I closed on that it's been 1 year and like a month. Mm-hmm.
Cool. The audience can't see my face, which is a good thing. And so radio is for ugly people, but I'm actually not super ugly, so it works. But so in general, I love the idea of buying the practice you're in. So like associates out there, if that's ever available, and even in your case, you didn't think it was available, but you jumped on it. Super smart idea, because the one is so much better than the one you don't.
Yeah,
kudos to you.
at least I know what the problems are in my practice. I don't know what they are in another practice, right? So,
So tell me a little bit about the numbers of the practice that you bought at the time of purchase.
yeah. So the time of purchase. So in 2017, the practice probably did like 700,000, maybe like 750. In 2018, we did a little over a million, and most of that, anyway. We did have two doctors in 2017. And then in 2018, the one doctor left about halfway through and kind of phased out. So it was mostly me. And then I got another associate in like September. She started coming on part time. Anyway, and then so when I bought the practice, we probably just barely about a million in collections.
Okay. And so currently, it's been a year.
Hmm.
So talk about kind of what's been, how has your experience been in ownership so far?
It was good, a little crazy, kind of like, so so I had been in the practice, so I was like credentialed. We're very insurance based. I was credentialed with a lot of insurances, but with like the switch of the tax ID number, it was like this whole nightmare that, getting it switched over, even though I was still credentialed, it was like switching over. And there was like 3 months where we didn't collect anything from insurance, and I didn't really know why. I thought it was all like the tax ID still, but turns out we do like electronic submissions through Henry Schein, and they just weren't submitting them. Like, I don't know, there was like this mix up where I don't know if it was because of the change of ownership or what, but like they just weren't submitting any claims. So for like through March, we didn't get any insurance money, and I was like drowning. Talk about practice underwater. Like I was just like watching my bank account go down to like my working capital just diminish, and my only money coming in was like patient portions, which was not very much. So
Yes, all cleanings were free.
yeah, exactly. So
Oh my goodness.
it was
Oh,
crazy for a little while, and we finally sorted
oof.
that out and kind of caught back up. So anyway, that's where we're at. I feel like so my area is very, or yeah, my area in general and my practice is very insurance driven. So
Okay. So you have so there's like an associate, like this practice has kind of seemed like it's been like one doctor, two doctor, one doctor, two doctor. So currently what's the situation?
yeah, so now we're two doctor of my associate. She was slow. Like when they brought her on, so they brought her on like a month before I ended up buying the practice. And I straight up told her, I'm like, this is not a two doctor practice right now. This is like a 1.5 doctor practice. And as long as you know that coming in, like I think it will grow, but just so you know. And so she came on and it was pretty slow. Like she was probably producing 20,000 for the first couple months. And that was also fun because they gave her a guarantee. And then that, like, I kept that, but they gave her a guarantee of like 500 a day, and she was producing like 20,000 for the whole month, and I was paying her guarantee for the first 6 months. And so like they paid 1 month of that and I paid five. So that, in combined with like no money coming in from insurance, was stressful time. But
Oh yeah.
now she's doing better. She's not super aggressive, as far as just, I don't know, she's kind of slow. She did 1 year residency at a school and then came straight to me. So she's been out like in private practice 1 year, and she's getting faster, but she's not super productive, I wouldn't say. But it's good. She's learning, and like I said, the practice probably wouldn't have handled someone that was like a real go getter. Like they would have been frustrated because her schedule wasn't very full at the beginning.
Okay. So tell me about, so like let's kind of do your chief complaint or assessment of where you're at. Like, I haven't really told you anything. I haven't really looked at a whole lot. But, like where would you say your practice is at? Where do you want it to go? And what do you think is keeping you from getting there?
Yeah. So right now, I would say, so I feel like my chief complaint or my chief thing here is that I feel like I'm working really hard. Um, and doing okay, but I just feel like, I don't know, I'd like to be doing better. I'd like to be maybe more efficient. Um,
Are we talking financially better? Like you'd like to make more money?
yeah, or at least the same amount with maybe not killing myself so much. So, like I say, in 2018, so my practice, we're open extended hours. We're open. So Monday we're 9 to 5, but Tuesday we're 9 to 7. Wednesday we're 9 to 6, and Thursday we're 9 to 7, and then like a half day on Friday. And in 2018, I worked that schedule myself the whole year, and it was like a lot. And then 2019, we shifted where we alternate. Like on Tuesday, I leave at 5, and my associate stays till 7, and on Thursday, vice versa, and we both stay till 6 on Wednesday. But I feel like even though I leave, or like I stop seeing patients at 5 on Tuesday, I still leave at like 7 because I'm trying to catch up on just like all the other stuff. And like I don't mind it, but I just feel like for the amount of work that I'm doing, I don't know if I could sustain that much forever. And so yeah, just like keep my take home pay or increase it, but also just like cut down a little bit on the amount of time that I'm spending in the practice.
What's your take home pay?
Probably so this year I just paid myself like a salary of like 16,000 a month. That's just the way I've been paying myself.
Okay, so is that about the same as profit, or do you have like this amount of
No,
profit that you haven't paid yourself that
there's
you
definitely
need to?
profit that's going to like the practice, and so like yeah, the practice is like bank account growing there, so I could take more.
Okay.
My yeah, I don't know. I also pay, I pay the practice note every month, but I don't pay from like my personal money. I just pay it from like the practice
Yeah.
account.
Okay.
So
Okay. So you're looking at like 200K ish kind of in that
that's like what
department.
I'm taking. Yeah. So like overall, like I think um, yeah, probably that. So I think my net profit for the year after I paid myself and everything was like 96,000. That's not my EBITDA. That's like my net profit. Like my EBITDA, I think was closer because there's a lot of like interest in everything. I think my EBITDA comes out to closer to it was pushing 230 or something like that. I want to say for the year.
So like total you made like 200 salary plus 96 profit.
Yeah. Uh huh.
So like 300K.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Cool. Okay. So biggest concern would be like the sustainability of your practice. Would you say that's like the biggest like chief complaint that the reason you're on the phone with me right now is sustainability?
Yeah, I would say yeah, sustainability. Like, I don't know if I want to just keep working that hard for that,
So when you say working that hard,
or long hours, I guess. If I could do it in less time, or cut back a day, or maybe cut back a few of the later hours.
so is it the evenings that really get to you?
Yeah, I mean, it gets to my wife more than me, but like, so I've got 3 kids, and um, on those evenings, it's hard. I don't know. I do feel a lot better this year than like since I've cut down to just one later day, and it is nice. I think it causes a problem too with like the staff. Like no one likes those late hours, so it's kind of like I don't know. Like we just lost an assistant, and it's been hard to find someone that wants to like come in and work those hours. So I don't know. It's just I feel like it's kind of been a source of headache, but I also feel like our patients love it. So I don't feel like it's something I can just magically or just take away without really feeling it.
Yeah. I'm with you. Income wise, are you content with 300?
Yeah, I guess it doesn't feel like 300 because, like I say, I haven't been taking it, but yeah, I mean, when you say 300, I think, oh yeah, that's actually pretty good. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't, when I pay myself like 16K a month, I think I'm taking home like 185. But yeah, I mean, I could take home more. So yeah.
Okay. So you're now explain to me okay, so if I'm understanding things correctly before I kind of switch gears here, we're biggest concern you'd say is just the feeling of exhaustion that you have.
Yeah, that in combined with just the mindset of, I will say, like, I look at, like, I have a hard time not comparing myself to other people, and it's like a common theme on your show, I think, and I'm definitely a victim of it. Like, I'm like, holy cow, man! I just feel like for as hard as I'm working, I should be doing more than what I'm doing, and I don't know.
Explain what you mean by doing more than what I'm doing.
I just feel like, so I get down on myself a lot, or not down on myself, but um, so my insurance reimbursements in my area, it's pretty low. Like, I'd say, my average crown is probably like $650. My average cleaning is below 100. My hygiene exam is like 89 a lot of time, or like between like 89 sometimes that might be the low end, and like 120 on like the high end. And so it's like, I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes I use that as like an excuse, but I'm like, I just think I could be doing, with as hard as I'm working, I could be doing more production, or just be, doing better.
So are you like legitimately slammed throughout the day?
It feels like that, yeah.
Really? So you
Yeah.
get there and you're like busy seeing patients, doing dentistry the whole day. You don't feel like you're very slow.
Yeah, it feels like that. Especially, well, we're coming off December, so December was for sure like that. Like, it was crazy. Like, I just worked through lunch most days, and just, there were days when we saw like 45 patients, when normally we wouldn't see that many. So I run my column, and my associate runs a column, and then we have like an overflow column, and then I run usually 3 columns of hygiene.
Okay, so you have 3 hygienists there on any given day.
2, and then it's assisted hygiene. Does that make sense? So 2
Yeah.
hygienists, and they run 3 columns.
Okay, and how often do they see a patient?
Usually every hour. New patients we give an hour and 20 minutes, and SRP is a little longer, but every hour.
Okay, so what's the assistant doing?
So the assistant is, so we'll stagger, and the assistant will bring back and just take x-rays while the hygienist is finishing up the cleaning, and then they'll swap or whatever. And the assistant will polish, and yeah.
So like is it, 8 hours in the day, 2 hygienists, 16 patients, or are you squeezing in more patients because they're assisted?
I would say, I mean, so they'll have, it's usually more than 16. I don't know. Yeah.
So like you got a 9 o'clock appointment, right?
Right. So we've
Is
got
there a 10 o'clock appointment, an 11 o'clock appointment, a 12 o'clock,
Yes, and then there will be a 9:30.
Oh, okay, good.
Does
So
that
you
make
have,
sense? Yeah, so there's
yeah.
3 going at once, 3 columns going. Yeah,
Oh, okay. So you're
does that
pretty
make
much
sense?
like 3 hygienists would need to work that, but instead you're having 2 with an assistant.
Correct, yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm on board then.
Yeah.
At first, I thought you were running 2 columns of hygiene in 3 columns with an assistant. I was like, that doesn't make sense. Okay.
No.
Yeah,
So there's 3
cool.
patients at any given
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
cool. Got it. Okay. So now give me, and I'm just like really probing here, just kind of like fully understand your situation here.
Yeah, sure.
But your staff makeup. So you have 2 hygienists, a hygiene assistant. Who else you got?
2 assistants, doctor assistants.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got, well, okay, so we just lost 2 staff members at the end of the year. But what I was at was a front desk who is also an assistant. So she'll come back and do my doctor 3rd column for like crown seats and whatever. And she's also answering phones and doing stuff up front. And an office manager and an insurance coordinator who also just like helps with the stuff in the front.
So 2 front desks, a floater, 2 assistants, a hygiene assistant, and 2 hygienists.
Yep.
Okay.
And then associate, yeah.
An associate. Okay. And tell me about the assistant that you just lost.
So She,
Or sorry, the staff members you just lost. Who are they?
yeah. So my insurance coordinator, I just lost. She was driving. She was commuting like over an hour every day. Um, and she's a single mom, and it was just, I think she just needed something closer to home. And then I lost a doctor's assistant, and um, yeah, so she didn't get along great with our office manager, and I think she just kind of got tired of it.
Okay. Um, so I feel like for us, James, the best thing would do to be really to address that the feeling of exhaustion, like that, if nothing else, like if we can kind of like see where that's coming from and get a plan for how to attack that, your happiness in general will probably go up enough to really, make it feel sustainable to you.
Hmm.
That's kind of the biggest thing I'm hearing. And go ahead.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I also like, yeah, I think I say that, and I need to work on my leadership because the exhaustion is not just from the dentistry. You know what I mean? It's like the everything, and so like I'd like to work on my leadership and and then just kind of like you guys have said before, but just like that feeling of um like comparing myself to other people or whatever that is.
Yeah. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And we all do it, myself included. So yeah, like and that never stops. Like you have to stop it yourself. It'll never get. When I get to a certain point, I'll be above. Like there will always be somebody doing better than you, no matter how good you're doing. I don't care who it is. Like there will always be somebody making more money or doing like whatever. But let's talk about like, so let's make a list. Like, what are the things that are the most exhausting about your job? So you mentioned leadership. We'll circle back to that, but let's just
Mhm.
get a quick list here going.
That's a good one. So leadership, I think managing, yeah, so managing the staff and balancing working like on my practice versus in my practice. So I feel like I'm just really busy on the doctor, like in treatment, and then I don't maybe have time to, um, do all the business things that I would like to get to.
Okay. So like you said, Tuesday nights, you're there, you're supposed to be done at 5, but you stay till 7. Like, what are you doing for 2 hours?
Yeah, that. So it's not always like that, but so I'll be, catching up on notes, going over day sheets and making sure that that everything's adding up, like our numbers, and just checking. I don't know, just like I guess auditing stuff um, and maybe like treatment planning bigger cases when I don't really have other time to do that. So I'll just take some time on those more complicated cases and treatment plan those. Trying to catch up on how are we doing, making sure we're on track with everything.
Okay. Would you say that like that's the thing that's getting in the way of you working on the business is like all the stuff that you have to do to kind of keep the business going?
Yeah, maybe. Honestly, maybe I need to let go more with like the delegation, but I don't know if that's it either.
Look who you're talking to.
Right.
Like that was the first thing that was going to come out of my mouth was like, I want to hear about like, let's talk about clinical notes for a second.
Yeah.
Okay. So talk about like, what is your process like with clinical notes?
So with clinical notes, so I'll have like a template, and I'll just go in there and I'll just adjust it for the patient, and it doesn't take a ton of time, but you know, if I saw 10, 12 patients and I'm just going through and just checking those and signing them, that just adds up. And so,
Yeah.
I don't,
So are they writing the note and you're signing it?
not really. There's like a template that will like usually pop up for whatever procedure, and I'll
Mhm.
just go in and adjust that template
Are you
and
seeing
sign it.
10 to 12 doctor patients a day?
Um, Maybe like that might be high, but definitely some days I see that many. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. But when you said 10 to 12 patients, like hygiene exams, how are you doing those notes?
Oh, I don't do those. No, my hygienist does those.
Okay. Um, why is your assistant not doing your notes?
I don't know. So probably because I don't make her. Um, so I've got two assistants, and so the doctors alternate assistants each day. So we don't have the same assistant every time.
Okay.
Um, and like I feel like I don't know, maybe I'm just like scared to ask my one assistant, my lead assistant. She does a lot. She does all the ordering and everything like that. And she I don't know, like I just feel like I'm asking a lot of her already. And so asking her to do the notes, I just haven't done it.
And like, how much is that affecting you? Like that inability or in like lack of desire to have that uncomfortable conversation? Like, is that getting in the way of like, like what is that getting in the way of?
Yeah, so I mean, in this situation, I don't know. I mean, the clinical notes really aren't that much, but I definitely know that I shy away from those conversations in general. So like this is probably the least of the worries of those conversations that I should be having that maybe I'm not.
What's another example of a conversation like that you need to be having that you're not?
Yeah, so my a lot of my stress comes from or a lot of my staff stress comes from my office manager. She's really not very good at managing the staff at all. She's good with like the numbers and she's good with some of that stuff. She's a terrible like so to be perfectly frank, my the rest of my staff, they don't really respect her as a manager. They don't like see her as their boss or manager. They see, they don't they don't respect her that way. And I think a lot of it just has to do with like maybe just her and I've talked to her about this for sure, but just they feel like she blows her off or that she's not listening. And so I think a lot of it comes from that. And I've had a few conversations with her about it, but um, nothing like consistent enough to see a lot of change.
So you have an office manager who's really good at dealing with insurance and collecting and making sure that your books are, organized and clean. But as an actual manager themselves, not great. Does
Yeah.
that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds right. But yeah.
How many times have you heard that on the show?
Yeah, right.
Like, so that was like my office manager when I walked into my acquisition. That's exactly how you would describe her.
Yeah.
Like I think I've heard that 3 times now. Like it's super common.
Hmm.
Like this is not an anomaly of an issue. Like this is like every office manager. I'm putting air quotes right now
Yeah,
because like
exactly. Yeah.
it's just the person who's the best at collecting money and dealing with insurance is called the office manager, but it's never treated like the office manager by anybody
Right.
in the office. So do you feel like how would you describe her personality?
Um, so honestly, she's good. She's good at like sales, but like she's good at like convincing patients, hey, you should get this done. She's not good at listening or like making someone feel like they're listened to. So when the staff brings a problem to her, she'll be like, "Oh yeah, I'll fix it," and inevitably, it's actually not fixed, and um, so they lose that faith in her, and she doesn't really own up to it either. So honestly, like there have been times where I've really wondered, like, oh man, like I don't know, like I should probably try and find a new office manager. Um, and then I get kind of scared, like she does do a ton of stuff that honestly I personally don't even know how to do, and so I kind of get scared that way. Like if I didn't have her, you know, I don't know how to do like I don't know how to submit payroll. I don't know how to do all these things that she kind of does. So
It's funny because like as a leader yourself, you kind of recognize a lot of areas in which you might be, needing to improve.
right,
And your office manager has a lot of leadership areas where she could improve. But like the kind of the thing you go to is like, well, maybe I should find the new one.
yeah,
And it's like,
right,
so like, let's find the new guy to own the practice too. Then you know what
right,
I
yeah,
mean?
right. It's like why don't yeah, exactly,
So I think you guys can both do it together.
yeah,
Um, you know, like, I don't know. I I think until you've really walked into and like shown up as like a really effective leader,
Hmm.
we have no way of truly assessing the fit of that manager
Right.
because you have not given her all the tools she needs to be successful.
Yeah, that's true.
Um, and that's like not the easy thing to hear, right? But I
No, but
appreciate you just
totally.
saying like, yep,
I'm
yep.
with you 100%. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's like the buck stops with me, obviously. Like, if she's not doing it, it's because I'm not, you know,
You're
leading
not
her to do
facilitating
it.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one way or the other.
Hmm.
And so look, I feel like I see a lot of myself in you in a lot of ways. The like I don't know if you do this, but when I walked in, I didn't want to be called boss.
Yeah,
Like that was a thing. Like I wanted to be like everybody else on the team. We're all like, and plus you worked with them as employees. Like you guys were all like the same, and then
exactly.
you became the boss. Was that like an awkward dynamic for you?
Kind of, I mean, a little bit. So I did like for the year before I brought the practice, I did realize like, hey, like I want to buy practice. I'm going to need to have to step it up because for the first year and a half that I was there, I just kind of, I was very much like I'm an employee here, same as you guys, whatever, and I didn't take any leadership. Um, the year preceding buying the practice, knowing I was going to buy a practice, I knew I had to step up my leadership somewhat. So I did start taking a lot bigger role in it and trying to do it. And then after buying the practice, I feel like I did step up more. But, like I say, obviously I know I have a long ways to go in that aspect.
So I'm gonna boil down like here's your litmus test for how you are as a leader. Can you recognize the uncomfortable conversation you need to have, and then can you have it no matter what it is?
Right.
Like that's and can you get the result you're intending? So like those three things,
Hmm.
I'd say, can you recognize the uncomfortable conversation you need to have? I think to be determined, right? Like,
Yeah.
you've kind of given me a couple things. We haven't really spent a lot of time in your metrics yet, but like, yeah, I think I could give you, some conversations. Um, are you able to have them at this time? Like, are you willing to have them and make them routine? I would say at this time, probably not. And then, are you able to get the desired effect? Well, you're not having the conversation. So,
Right.
you know, no. Um, so I feel like that. Yeah. And I don't know if you like, so for me, one thing that was super uncomfortable walking out of school, walking into an office was walking into an exam and having a patient that, just met me. I felt like they were judging me for how young I am. They love the old guy that I just replaced. He's not old, but the older guy. And now I'm telling them they need something. Like that was a super uncomfortable conversation for me. And I had it like hundreds of times. And then it's no longer uncomfortable.
Right. Totally.
Situations with your staff, the exact same. So like right now you have this assistant with resistance, right? Like she's overworked, stressed, tired, and you know, so you don't want to ask her to do clinical notes. Um, but the reality is it's the best thing for the practice that your assistants do as much as possible for you so that you can then lead your ship. Like you need to have, and I'm super big on delegating, obviously.
Hmm.
So like but the reason is like, and I have the saying that if I do it once, I'm going to do it for the rest of my career, every single day, all the time.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I'm very stubborn about doing stuff. Like I won't do it. If somebody gets me to numb up a patient, I'm going to look at the schedule every time to make sure there's not a hygienist available to numb up my patient
Hmm.
because I just don't want to do it all the time. And same thing with your clinical notes. Like, yeah, it's not a big deal, right? Go in the template, fill a couple X's and like sign your name or whatever. But it's every day, all the time for the next 20, 30 years. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And that's what it's costing you to not have that conversation.
Totally.
So, I think in general, do you feel like where's your resistance to having the like so like what's the like let's just kind of go through like let that conversation with the assistant. Like what is it about it that you're nervous about? Like how do you think it's going to go? Like what are you trying to avoid? Kind of talk me through the resistance.
Yeah. So this assistant, she is amazing. She's really good. She's been assisting for 21 years, so she's she she's also really, really good at staying on top of ordering, just the organization. She runs the whole back. She does everything. Um, she like everyone in the office looks to her as the leader the most, honestly.
Hmm.
Like I said, they don't really look to the OM so much, but they do look to her. And so um yeah, so she like when we hired her, I told you we're open those late hours.
Hmm.
Like she was not wanting to work those late hours, and I mean obviously it was the other owners that hired her, so they hired her
Hmm.
and they said okay. And so anyway, so she leaves at 5 every day, and that's when the floater jumps in after she leaves. And but anyway, so she is on top of everything in the back, as far as like just keeping it running smoothly, which I love. Um, but I know that there are times where she feels like um, she's she's doing everything she can in the back and isn't having a lot of help from everyone else. And she rarely leaves when we told her she would be able to leave at 5 every day, and she rarely. I don't know. She does, but um, she I will say she is a hard worker and she's always working. So I guess I look at that and I think she's my hardest worker, and she's always doing something, so I hesitate to put something more on her plate. I think that's why I have not had that conversation, because I recognize her as my very best employee and my hardest worker, and not wanting to rock the boat in that sense, I guess.
Okay. Um, and does she feel like she wishes she had more help from her fellow staff members to kind of help her with whatever workload she's taking on, or is she like not does not want help from other people?
No, yeah, I think she would like help from other people. Like I say, we're in a weird spot right now because we lost our other assistant, and so now we're looking for an assistant right now. So she's doing even more than she was before, and just staying late, and it's a lot of that's falling on her, and we're working with temps and everything like that, and she's trying to like manage them and train them. And so she definitely, I think, would like help from others, and I think you know that's where I could help probably facilitate the others to help her out more, and maybe that would open up her plate to do more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think she's kind of like in a leadership role in the office,
Hmm.
and I think she just um, needs to be get gotten have a little bit of help on some of the things. But so timing is everything,
Hmm.
right? Now is not the time
Right.
to ask her to do your clinical notes,
For
right?
sure.
Like, so right now we're having this conversation, you're going to get all fired up, and then you're going to be like, all right, do my clinical notes. And she's going to be like, I'm super
Exactly.
overwhelmed. Yeah. So like, this is not the time,
Right.
right? It's not common that I talk to a doc who has temps in and all this stuff. Like, temps are the worst.
Oh,
Um, yeah. I doubt there's any temp assistants listening to this right now, so I'm not offending anybody, but oh my gosh. Ugh.
it's the word.
Yeah.
It feels like my day is like so. That's the other thing. Is like you're catching me right now, where I'm like uber stressed because everything is just taking longer. And I was talking with this lead assistant just today about this, how it's like for the last week or two, we just like haven't been in our groove. We haven't been, because normally before this, like I work a lot, but like we're in a groove and it hasn't felt bad. But now, like where we're down a couple staff members and we're always scrambling for help, and people are trying to, we're just trying to make things work every day. We are out of our groove and it is exhausting.
Yeah. I can hear that. So I'm gonna coach you through this conversation with the assistant. We're gonna stop part one of this interview right now, and then next week when we get back on the show, we're gonna go back to it and we'll talk about kind of how to handle that conversation with the assistant and when the future when you have it, and then we'll go through your metrics to kind of see where you're at.
Sound good?
Alrighty, I hope you guys enjoyed that interview. So Matt, I heard you have multiple thoughts about this episode.
This isn't a rare thing, George. I always have multiple thoughts.
I know. I think the outros are going to start being when I do the interview. Like, what does Matt not like about what I said this time?
Come on, George. We agree a lot more than we disagree. We're a
That's
team in
true.
this.
That's true. You just have so much strong opinions, so it's always nice to get them on
You got
air.
to be your authentic self on these things, George. Otherwise, what am I?
Yeah, no, that great point. Absolutely. Let's hear what you got.
No, I really liked how you pointed out that James is kind of treating his office like they're all equals. Like he's an associate in an office, just working, and they're all staff members, and they all are at the same level, and which is not the case. Obviously, he's the leader, he's the boss, and it's stopping himself from having those difficult conversations is his like identity crisis inside himself. Like he doesn't see himself as leader and boss. He sees himself as one of the team, a team member. And it gets in the way of him asking for what he wants. Like he doesn't want to work these late hours, and he's, afraid to bring them up to staff because he's like, well, like you said, I don't want to work them, so I'm not going to make you work them. And I think he's just in many ways getting in his own way in that.
Yeah, and I think, I kind of made the point in the interview, but, if you're going to go through the trouble of having an associate when you may not 100% need one, you might as well kind of get all the benefits from that. And I think, one thing I learned from you is, asking him and having him really fully identify, like, what is that costing him, right? His inability to do that and be the type of leader that he needs to be, what is that really costing him on a daily basis? And, the clinical notes is a great example. Like, that's a lot of work you're doing all the time, really, to avoid a conversation.
Right. He hasn't really opened himself up to the possibility that things could be different and still be sustainable. Like he just kind of looked at his schedule and thought, well, I can't fit in any more patients. I can't do any more dentistry. So how am I going to make any more money? That would require me working longer and harder and tougher, when that's not the case. And that's something you guys will get to as you talk more with James. For those who don't know, James hired George. So I'll just let that out there.
Sure.
I have permission for that?
Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, good. For myself, it was like wanting to hear about where you guys are going. Like I'm interested in to see how your relationship works and where the path you guys go down, because a lot of this interview and in part 2 is you reassuring him that he's in an okay spot. Like everything's fine. There's nothing wrong that he's doing. It's just now the next step that he has that knowledge that everything's okay. And now, okay, where does he want to go? And that's kind of what I was left maybe missing from this interview.
Yeah. And so I like that you're foreshadowing to part 2, because in part 2, the typical practice underwater, is part 1 is like, kind of us feeling them out. Like, I don't know if you guys realize this, but I get on the air with like no information whatsoever on this guest. And, they might send something in an email, but really have no idea. And a lot of part 1s are us probing and trying to figure out what's going on. And then part 2 is us looking through their metrics and kind of getting a plan. And this episode, part 2, next week, is not getting a plan. It's more, I guess, so here's the thing. Like, you talked to him about his chief complaints at the very beginning of this interview. I didn't hear the amount of money I make as one of them. So I didn't feel like it was my job to, in this interview, let him know, ways that he can make more money. And, like a couple times it comes up where he's like, well, like, I can't make any more money. We're all maxed out. I'm like, dude, you're working out of one column. Like, of course you can make more money. Like, that's an option. But that wasn't something that I felt was important to him, so I didn't focus on it. But like in a coaching relationship, where we're going to be working together, like that's totally different, right? And in part 2, I'll go through more of the things that we'll do. But, it just, if for the interview, didn't really make sense for me to go down. I felt like I'd be putting my preconceived beliefs about how much money is possible in his situation on him when he didn't come requesting that information.
Right. Yeah, and that's a great practice to never have an agenda with the client, right? As coach, you're supposed to be agenda free and let the client bring what they're looking for and what they're looking to create. So I thought you handled that part of it beautifully. I guess just the like integrator in me wants to see that plan, wants to see like where you guys go, how he does go about things differently. Because I did hear him bring up a lot of the angst about his productivity financially at the office, like feeling like he's doing a lot of work, working hard, doing a lot of dentistry, and not taking home what he thinks he deserves from that. He said he's comfortable at his current income, but he also mentioned that a few times.
And this is where we disagree, right? Like your way of handling that, or not your way of handling that, but like, I guess the way you're looking at it is, and I could be wrong, but you're like, well, more money is possible. And I think for me, the way I want to approach that is more money is possible. Yes. But I want that feeling of, his upset feeling about his current income to be alleviated before we move forward to making more money, so that we're not making more money for the purpose of trying to resolve a feeling that is unhappy or unhealthy.
Right. You're getting a baseline for where you guys are going, which is great.
yeah, like I want to help him with that feeling of, I think he has, I forgot the word he used, but it's almost like he's not, like almost an inadequacy thing, and that's something I go through a lot, comparing yourself to others, like comparing yourself to people who make more money than you. And, I want to address that with him so that that's not something that, at least it's something he's aware of moving forward. And then we can all, like, obviously if we're going to do coaching, like you're going to make more money. Like, so yes, that's going to happen, but I also would like to make sure that you're okay.
Right. That he's come from a stable place and everything.
Yeah.
And I think we'll keep this part one outro shorter because I have a lot of thoughts on part two.
Yeah, I do too.
More than just a couple, like you think.
Yeah, like I have my bullet points right here. I have 2 bullet points for part 1, and I got like 8 for part 2. So we're going to have fun next week.
We are.
Well, like 5 minutes for us, but next week for you guys. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you next week on Practice Underwater. This was fun. And Matt took it easy on me, so hopefully next week he'll give me the goods.
I'll bring it up for you, George.
All right. See you guys next week on Practice Underwater. Thanks for listening to another episode of Practice Underwater. We'll see you guys next week.
If you're interested in one-on-one coaching with either Dr. George Hariri or Dr. Matt Garino, our contact emails are in the show notes.
And if you're interested in being on Practice Underwater as a guest, where we can look at your practice anonymously, you can go ahead and contact the email in the show notes and follow those directions to get on the show. Thanks, and we'll see you guys next week on Practice Underwater.